Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Matt, Elizma and Steve, and we are going to have a great fun day today because we're going to talk about two weird hormones, leptin and ghrelin. That's weird, isn't it? Two weird hormones.
Why? What's so weird about it?
What's so weird? I'm glad you asked, because they're both opposing hormones. One does one thing and one does the other. One makes you hungry, one makes you not hungry.
Oh, right.
Completely opposing.
So what's weird about them?
Well, what's weird about them is that they're supposed to be in wonderful harmony in the body, and they're supposed to tell us not to overeat, not to undereat, so as we all maintain perfect weight, yet 60% of Australians are overweight. What's going on there?
That's fucking weird, Steve.
That is weird. That's what I find weird. We've got these wonderful hormonal systems that pretty much don't work.
So what I reckon is really weird and bugs the hell out of me because I'm sitting here on an untapped gold mine. One of the hormones we're going to talk about today is a thing called leptin. So leptin, I first heard about this because I read something that said there's this chemical called leptin that strips fat from your body, will just burn fat like you can't believe, and at the same time suppress your appetite. So you're not crazy hungry, you don't have cravings and food addictions, and it just strips fat from your body. Yeah. And then I thought, where do I get this amazing chemical? And then I read on and found out that the highest source of this chemical in the whole world is in fat women. Then I thought, well, why? I read it comes out of fat cells. So then I started looking down at myself and I resembled a fat woman. And I thought, I must have a heap of this stuff. Why the hell am I still so fat? So leptin is a chemical released from fat cells that makes your body strip off fat. So why am I fat?
Well,
that's weird.
That's weird, and that's what's so weird about these hormones. And, you know, what if I told you had gastric band surgery and the ghrelin hormone basically disappears?
Well, I haven't even talked about ghrelin.
I know.
What the hell is ghrelin, Steve?
What the hell is
I was
ghrelin?
just talking about leptin.
Yeah, ghrelin's a hormone.
So the ghrelin's the opposing hormone to leptin? So
it's
leptin's a hormone that tells your body to burn fat and not eat.
Yes.
So ghrelin
is one that makes you hungry. Basically, it's secreted from the stomach. So a lot of people think...
growling stomach.
Yeah, your growling
So when
stomach.
your stomach's growling, fair chance you've got ghrelin floating around and that makes you hungry.
That's great. I wish I knew that when I was teaching students this stuff because
How could you not know? You're like a musician and an artist and a wordsmith.
It's amazing because Elizma, people think hormones are made in your testes or your ovaries or whatever, but these are made from two different parts of your body.
I don't think anyone's thought that about you, Elizma. Hormones are made in your testes? What's wrong with you, Steve? Talk about weird hormones. What weird hormone are you on today?
Oh, your sex. People think hormones are testosterone, all that sort of thing. They don't know about hormones come from the kidneys, fat cells all over the body. Yeah. And Elizma's got very low leptin levels, just looking at her, as a famous athlete, and yet she's lean.
So what do you mean, dude? You're so weird today, Steve. So you're just looking at Elizma.
Yeah, I'm looking at Elizma.
And you're assuming she's got no leptin. Why?
Well, why? Because look how lean she is.
So low fat.
Low fat.
Low body mass index.
Yes.
Yes, because it's pretty much like a good way to sort of like...
So how come I'm always hungry and I'm fat? So because I'm the big one here. So I've got the fat cells. I've got all the leptin. You people over here that don't hardly get hungry and hardly eat and then you burn all this metabolism, just run stupid. This is bullshit. You've got no leptin. I got the leptin. Why aren't I burning and bouncing off the walls?
Well, basically it's called leptin resistance.
Yeah.
Where your body is resistant to the effects of leptin that you're producing.
So I got all this leptin floating through my bloodstream, and then the way these hormones work, they bind into an antenna, that antenna or a receptor. That receptor then sends a whole heap of signals through to my cells to say, burn the fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not doing that because I've just got too much of it. Is that what it is? So
exactly.
So my fat cells are constantly pumping out leptin. My body is sick to death of seeing leptin. And the leptin doesn't work.
Yeah.
And then what other things that cause that? So which comes first? Do I get fat and then get leptin resistance, or do I get leptin resistance and then get fat?
That's the interesting thing, because I think that's been a debate in a lot of circles. The same with insulin resistance, and I think the consensus at this stage is that it's the becoming fat that makes you leptin resistant and insulin resistant. So that's the thing that happens first is the weight gain.
So this is where. So I'm always trying to work out ways of like finding solutions to problems. So we know that one of the problems with obesity is that we're resistant to leptin. The leptin's coming from the fat cells. So in theory, if we lose all of our fat cells, we lose our leptin resistance. So do we have to fix the obesity to fix the obesity?
In a sense, yeah, you got to lose weight to lose weight.
Yeah. So like, and if I don't lose weight, so like, I mean, is it so? Because I'm just sitting here thinking right now, because I've got an advantage over you guys for fat loss. One, I've got a lot more fat, so I've got stuff to burn. But I've got this amazing hormone floating through my bloodstream. If I could just access or tap into that hormone, if I could get that hormone to bloody work to stimulate fat loss and suppress my appetite, that would be a much better scenario than losing all of my fat and losing this amazing hormone that suppresses my appetite. Is there anything I can do while I've got a heap of fat cells because this is a big thing, is that if I look for herbs, so if I understand that I've got too much leptin in my bloodstream and that if I reduce my leptin, I'll be more leptin sensitive.
Yes.
So if I reduce my leptin, I'll be more sensitive to leptin. I'll have less. But leptin, by losing my leptin, doesn't that mean I've lost my amazing hormone that makes me burn fat?
No, the less leptin you are producing or secreting, the more responsive the receptors will become. So I always, talk about receptors as hungry hippos. If the receptors become responsive, it's like you have these hungry hippos and they just grab onto whatever leptin there is. Because it's not really about the amount of leptin, it is the signaling of leptin. And the signaling only happens when it binds to a receptor.
Yep.
So it's not whether you've got producing too little or too much. Like in a sense, leptin resistance is the same as having very low leptin levels.
Yeah.
It's the same physiological action. Even though you have a lot of leptin, leptin deficiency and leptin resistance is almost like the same physiological effect. So by having less leptin produced, you're just making the receptors more responsive. The receptors become responsive, then the signaling is enhanced, which means that your body is now registering that you have a lot of leptin. So now you feel full, now you feel sick.
But the net effect is the same, maybe. Meaning that if I've got lots of leptin with bugger all activity, and then I've got next to no leptin with heaps of activity, the net effect could be much the same. That the leptin, it is what it is. So is there something I can do to make my leptin work better?
Yeah.
So, because I don't want to really lower my leptin to make the receptors work better if I can have that leptin that I've got burning.
Absolutely. So you can use, very similar to insulin resistance, there are certain nutrients that you can use to make those receptors more responsive.
Yep.
So magnesium, chromium, I think you had a few others as well.
Manganese is another one. All these sort of second
It sounds like all insulin stuff.
It is. It's the same second messenger, which is cyclic AMP inside the cells. That's not touching leptin levels. That's making leptin work better.
Yeah.
And that's what you're all about. Another way.
So let's have a look. Sorry to interrupt there. So we look at leptin in our bloodstream. The first thing I do is we've got to get these hungry hippo. We've got to get these receptors fired up. How do we get our receptors fired up?
Yeah, let's start receptors. There's 5 ways. I'll give the first one.
Listen, this. He's got numbers and everything. He's made a list.
5 ways.
Memorized
the first one is to reduce fats in your blood. Triglycerides, they're called. You know, the blood test you get.
So is this how a low-fat diet works?
Low-fat diets increase triglycerides dramatically because they're usually high carbohydrates.
So that American Heart Association diet they did, which was a 10% fat diet, after 10 days increased blood triglycerides by 30%.
Yes, and they had to call the trial off because and conclude the Heart Foundation diet was a risk factor for heart disease.
Yeah, by increasing blood triglycerides and cholesterol. So now, we're going to screw with a few people out there, but eating a lower carbohydrate diet, even with higher fat, what does that do to your triglycerides?
Lowers it. Yep. Robert Atkins made this famous in the 90s when his diet was put to the test.
Yeah.
And it's a super high fat diet, all the bad fats.
Yeah.
And these triglycerides had plummeted to around 0.5, which is very low.
Yeah.
And so a high fat diet, or should I more specifically, a low carbohydrate diet makes triglycerides lower.
Why?
Because most of your triglycerides...
Because you're eating fat, aren't you? Aren't you eating a little bit more fat, and isn't that fat going into your bloodstream?
And being metabolised. But what the other bad fat is the stuff you make when you eat carbohydrates, and it's made in the liver, and it's called postprandial hyperlipidemia. which is after eating high fats in the blood, and that's induced by carbohydrate eating. So this is why people who eat a bowl of rice, big bowl of rice, and they're hungry half an hour later. And that's because it increases triglycerides in the blood, stops leptin receptors, and you feel hungry.
So have you ever done heme? Have you, Elizma?
I've done live blood analysis. Yeah.
Man, I love this thing I used to do for my clients, just to screw with them though, because it was fun visually. It was good. You go through and you show them their blood, and then go tell them to go eat some crappy food or something, and then come back. You put their blood under a microscope, and those yellowy globules, their blood is just full of fat globules. Now, I'm not talking biochemically here, but mechanically, if I was looking at these things, that gluggy, fatty stuff, that's the triglycerides in the bloodstream, huh? So is that why they stop the receptors working? I'm just trying to be dumb here, but like if I look at a receptor, these little glycoprotein antennas and that sort of stuff, with all of that gooey, sticky, gluggy fat in the bloodstream, is that why they don't work? They just get sticky?
That's absolutely. But there's something that you can do about that. I remember it was quite a few years ago, was a BBC program, and they did this kind of study where they were measuring blood after eating, and they were seeing the same thing, like the fat globules in the blood. And they did an experiment with exactly the same meal, and I think it was a bacon and eggs meal that they did this experiment with. If you went for a walk, the same person, the same meal, but you went for a 30-minute walk after you've eaten, they hardly got any fats in the blood.
So exercise will strip the triglycerides out of the blood as well.
Yeah, so going for that evening walk after dinner.
Go?
The triglycerides?
Yeah, when you're exercising and
it'll be burned through beta oxidation. So it's through you're activating the mitochondria, which is those little powerhouses inside the muscle cells. And because you're exercising, especially if it's fasted high interval exercise, you'll definitely be stimulating mitochondrial function, and that's sort of like where beta oxidation takes place, and you burn off all of these triglycerides.
Yeah, right.
And at the same time, that fasted high interval exercise will also upregulate those leptin receptors, because on the muscle cells, even though leptin is produced by fat cells, leptin receptors is in a lot of places in the body. It's on the immune cells, the white blood cells, but it also sits on the muscle cells.
Yeah, right.
And so they found that this, when you do fasted high interval training or exercise, these leptin receptors on the muscle cells become activated. Leptin then binds to it, and that stimulates the mitochondrial function and that beta oxidation.
That's awesome.
Little cascade.
And then, so I don't know how many we're on your list of 5, but so we've dropped triglycerides. So going a low carb diet will force the body to use the triglycerides as a source of fuel, as opposed to the glucose, thereby lowering blood levels of triglycerides.
Exactly.
The second one was exercise.
Burn them off.
Burn off whatever you can, because whether you're burning off glycogen, that improves insulin sensitivity to fix that insulin issue that causes a build-up of triglycerides. Otherwise, stimulating a fatty acid oxidation through the exercise. Both of those things will deplete blood triglycerides. Yep. So they're the 2 so far.
There's 2 so far. Do you want a third one?
Yeah, bring it on. We've got 5.
Here's an easy one. Sleep.
You've already set yourself up now. You've got to do 5 now.
Yeah, that's all right. No, I've got 5.
That's why I never say numbers, in case I forget where I am.
Here's an easy one. Sleep more. Yeah, that's easy, man. No, because if you get less than 7 hours of sleep, your receptors for your leptin actually decrease in sensitivity.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. That was published in a peer-reviewed paper, so it's all well. So lack of sleep makes you hungry.
I believe that.
And you crave foods, and that's because of
the
leptin.
I eat more.
Yeah, you eat more.
Because I should have gone to bed at like 9:30. That 10 to 11:30 window is like hunger city. Population me.
And if you went to sleep, well, that's because ghrelin levels, we haven't gone to ghrelin, that actually rises about 9 to 10 o'clock. So you should be asleep then.
I really should.
Because ghrelin helps you sleep. But we haven't got to ghrelin yet. But basically, leptin sensitivities improve with quality sleep. So if you went to bed at 9 and then woke up at 5 for your exercise, whatever, gym, high intensive training, and then had a low carbohydrate breakfast, this is a great 12 hours to get your fantastic leptin levels back to normal within 12 hours.
It's truth.
That's only 3 things.
Let's go number 4.
4, eat more protein.
Okay.
Amino acids actually help make leptin receptors more sensitive. That's why protein...
What about... So, hang on. All right. Now, eat more protein, but in a calorie deficit, or eat more protein with a calorie surplus, or like what?
So it doesn't matter with leptin.
So, eat more protein in relation to carb?
No, just more protein.
Just so, in general, if you eat more protein...
Yes, that's one of the things that'll help. Now, obviously, low carb is good because that's one of the other ones before. But have you ever eaten a big steak, say, and then you've craved another steak after that? Not many people do that, do they?
No.
But have you ever eaten like a bowl of rice and then felt like eating more rice afterwards or more food?
Yeah.
And that's the leptin difference.
Yeah.
The protein makes you feel full for many mechanisms, but one of them is leptin resistance.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, because people don't binge eat on
Steaks, no.
They'll binge eat on carbohydrates.
Yeah, it's chocolates
bacon.
and lollies and all those.
I'll binge on bacon like you do.
Yeah,
You got no idea.
but remember that bacon, commercial bacon, has got maltodextrin, and there's actually a lot of chemicals and sugar.
Sodium nitrite.
Commercial bacon. So,
Fake wood smoke. So good.
If you put maple syrup on your bacon, all bets are off though, because that's sugar.
That's what Americans do, though.
Oh, no, it's Canadian.
Canadians
Is it
do that.
Canadian?
I don't know, but when I'm in
shocking.
America, I always order the Canadian breakfast because they put maple syrup on my bacon with my pancakes.
Me.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, great.
Now,
Do you want number 4?
5?
Oh, 5.
We're at 5 now.
Okay.
I count.
Well, we're up to 4, but that's all right. Well, the fourth one
Where
is
are we? No, hang on.
No.
sleep.
No, don't.
Oh, I thought you were...
Number 1.
Yeah.
Number 1,
What's the...
reduce triglycerides through
Yeah.
diet.
Yes, carbs.
Number 2 was reduce triglycerides and stuff and things through exercise.
Correct.
Number 3 was sleep more.
Yep.
Number 4 was protein.
Yeah, okay.
Number 5.
Number 5 is soluble
See, man,
fibre.
look at this. He's got the list.
Soluble fibre. Soluble fibre actually increases leptin sensitivity via the production of the short-chain fatty acids.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That's really cool because now we're back to the microbiome.
Yes.
So with the short-chain fatty acids, which ones in particular? Did you get
butyrate and acetate.
Yeah, really? Man, I was only reading this really interesting paper the other day talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is an insulin-resistant syndrome, and a genetic potential for their microbiome to make less butyrate. Isn't that an interesting little link as well?
Yeah.
So right now, that link with your microbiome might go back to what you were talking about before when we were talking about the microbiome.
Gram-negative bacteria.
Yeah, the lipopolysaccharide. Now, just for people, we talked about inflammation, I think, before. Fat cells make a lot of inflammation. Injury, trauma makes inflammation. Anytime your immune system's activated, it's inflammation. Toxic exposure triggers inflammation.
Yeah.
But possibly the most common source and the biggest inflammatory load within our body might be coming from our microbiome. There's 10 times as many of those cells as there are whole cells of our whole body, and regardless if they're good or bad, their cell wall is made up of this stuff called lipopolysaccharide. And if they get broken down, destroyed, or eliminated or whatever, those lipopolysaccharide is liberated into your body and it's extremely inflammatory.
Yeah.
And they can even get lipopolysaccharide, and if they put it on your nerves, they can make anxiety. They put it on your immune cells, they can trigger inflammation. In your liver, it can cause an acute phase response like you've been poisoned. So tell us about lipopolysaccharide.
So lipopolysaccharides, it is sitting on the cell wall of gram-negative bacteria. Gram-negative bacteria would be things like Streptococcus, Klebsiella, just to name a couple. And Streptococcus infections is quite common, throat infections, tonsillitis, and things like that. Now, these lipopolysaccharides, when bacteria dies, it's sort of like they fragment, the cell wall, bacterial cell wall fragments, and it releases these lipopolysaccharides, which then it acts as an endotoxin inside the gut. But that triggers a lot of inflammation, and one of that inflammation in itself can increase the release of more leptin, and then that can also then contribute to leptin resistance in the long run. So that's sort of like where lipopolysaccharides come in. So it's very important to have a healthy gut microbiome as well, and we could even add that as a number 6. It's make sure your
Well, I said
gut's
5
healthy.
more from your inflammation, so there's actually that's the top one.
Yeah, right.
So there's 6 all up, but there's 5 plus that
bullshit.
Yeah.
See, look at him trying to pretend it was his idea the whole time. Now, I fucking forgot what I was going to say. But, okay, so if we have a look at, a lot of people with inflammatory bowel disorders, You know, so like IBD, like it's extremely common, and we're talking inflammatory bowel disorder. So most people assume it's just the immune system going spastic, but in some cases it's just straight out too many bugs or imbalance with gut bugs. When we talk about a healthy diversity, or when we talk about a healthy population, what a healthy gut should be is a nice big variety of all these different bugs without anything overgrown, because we have different bugs. We have pathogenic ones, and we also have ones that we call commensal, that are supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But even those commensal ones, if you get too many of them, they're all still a source of lipopolysaccharide.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole hygiene hypothesis again revolves around the fact that we get exposure to dead bugs and their lipopolysaccharide to prime our immune system, tell our immune system that something's coming in without actually having an infection. So it can prime our immune system. So dysbiosis is a word that gets commonly used, but not many people understand what dysbiosis is. People think dysbiosis is, oh, my gut bugs are out of whack, I need to take probiotics. That's not the case. Most cases of dysbiosis is you have an overgrowth of something. It's very rarely is your dysbiosis that you don't have bugs, because the reason why our guts are full of bugs is because there's bugs everywhere. It's all over our food, it's all over our hands, it's all over.
Yeah.
We're constantly eating these things. Most cases of dysbiosis, well, SIBO, if people anyone knows what SIBO actually stands for, it's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. We look at candidiasis and thrush and those sort of things. We look at most of these a lot of these gut conditions are an overgrowth of either one bug or multiple bugs, or lack of diversity where certain strains thrive and others don't even get a look in. So it's not just about throwing in more probiotics, because if you're overloaded with gut bugs already and you throw probiotics, what the hell are they going to do? They're not going to be able to push these things out of the way. It's like throwing grass seeds at weeds. It's not going to be able to get in and knock them out. So these probiotics are mainly going to go through, they're going to get eaten by the immune system, which is going to challenge the immune system, but in the process, it's going to liberate more lipopolysaccharide. So the key is to manage your levels of gut bugs and make sure we don't get an overgrowth.
All right, so let's just recap on what leptin does. Remember, leptin is this hormone that stops us overeating, so it regulates us as being weight. Now, we've got to ensure that leptin is working, because a lot of people, especially overweight people, develop a leptin resistance, and we've just discussed what we can do about this leptin resistance and what we can do about, getting leptin working so we tell our brain to stop eating. And then we've got this sort of opposing hormone, if I can call it that, called ghrelin. And ghrelin is a hormone secreted from the stomach, which actually drives your appetite. So it's not a bad one.
Yeah.
It's not a bad one, but it can be problematic. So this hormone basically says go and grab more food, and when you eat food, you get these stretch receptors in your stomach which shut off ghrelin production. So that's what ghrelin does in the body. And ghrelin is like the antagonist to leptin. It's the one that makes it. It's all healthy, but we know that when you have a stomach dysfunction, like if you have gastric banding, leptin levels disappear. So we have these major problems with ghrelin. So with ghrelin, what do you think are some of the pathologies associated with ghrelin and some of the problems or some of the things that we have to consider when we talk about ghrelin from the stomach?
I would probably say, it would have a role to play obviously in obesity, but also in a role in eating disorders. Binge eating, bulimia, anorexia, anything like that, because it regulates the appetite. And also there's a huge link between ghrelin and the mesolimbic system, which is the dopamine system, which is the whole reward system. Again, it's that wanting and that craving for food. So absolutely, it would certainly have a role to play in all of those kinds of disorders.
What does it do, dopamine? What's the
link?
Well,
ghrelin, I think there are ghrelin receptors on the VTA, and I can't remember the long name for it again. But
part of the brain.
Yeah, it's part of the brain that's part of that mesolimbic area where dopamine plays a role. And so apparently there's ghrelin receptors there. So when ghrelin gets secreted in the stomach and it gets into the bloodstream, that's one of the triggers. It'll go to the brain, it can cross the blood-brain barrier, and it can sort of attach those receptors and then stimulate dopamine release.
Because dopamine deficiency is associated with cravings.
Yes.
And addictions and that sort of stuff.
That's
so
right.
ghrelin, because it makes you crave things and eat things. So
yeah.
So ghrelin
So ghrelin sort of like it makes you hungry, then you eat, and then you get the
dopamine
reward,
release.
the
Yeah,
dopamine
right,
release, as long as there's no resistance. Because remember, we spoke about dopamine resistance a while back too. So it's all about the resistance, the leptin resistance, the dopamine resistance.
Hey, does triglycerides in the blood affect sensitivity of chemicals in the brain? Yeah, like we talked about those little receptors for insulin and leptin and that.
And it does with ghrelin too.
Yeah, right.
And that's another reason why people that are actually overweight have, believe it or not, less ghrelin overall throughout a daily period. There's a nice graph here, which by the magic of television we will show, but basically it goes up in the morning, and then when you eat, it drops down again. Lunchtime, it goes up, you eat, it drops down. Dinner.
So as your stomach starts growling, so this is a cool way too, because stomach releases ghrelin.
Yeah.
So it's your stomach telling you to eat, and your fat releases leptin, saying you've got a heap of fat, stop eating.
Yeah.
So this is where the communication issues come in, and that associated with obesity. So with the ghrelin released from the stomach, as you're getting hungry, and as your stomach's growing, you're getting the acid and the enzymes, it's telling you need to eat.
Yeah. And ghrelin is more like a short-term hormone, so it works from meal to meal to meal. Yeah. Whereas leptin is not. No. It's not a meal to meal to meal.
So is leptin like a constantly secreted, or does it come in waves? And that sort of stuff?
It has a circadian rhythm though. Yeah. Like leptin is at its lowest levels around lunchtime. So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Is that when your ghrelin's highest?
Well, it's highest just when your stomach's empty, basically.
Yeah, righto.
So the terrible thing about ghrelin is it's also high at night.
Yeah.
So if you're a, quote, night owl, have you ever gone out drinking, not like anyone in the podcast would, but then they go, I've got to get a kebab or I've got to eat a pie, and they eat again about midnight.
Yeah.
So these people typically have 4 meals a day if they're staying up late. So staying up late is probably one of the worst things you can do for trying to lose weight.
Oh, man, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, because you end up eating 4 times a day because your stomach is empty at 10 o'clock at night when you should be asleep, because you get up at 5 in the morning, like Brooklyn, who's listening. You won't see, she's off camera, but she gets up and trains in the morning at 4:30 every morning. Goes, she's going, no. But you know, this is what we should be doing as human beings. We should be getting up and hunting, gathering our food.
Or alternatively, you know, if you're just that kind of person where it's really hard for you to not eat something at nighttime, have the protein.
Yes.
You know, like what Steve was talking about, because at least that is going to promote, leptin, an adequate leptin response, or reduce that leptin resistance. So you could mitigate things like that. You know, if you instead of saying, well,
what if we put our calories then? You know, for example, what if that's what's typically happening, for a lot of these people? What if we skip breakfast? Do your exercise and that sort of stuff in the morning, stay depleted all day, and then reload, work with this window at night and put it back in at night.
That's right. Have your lunch as your big meal, because that's when your leptin levels is at its lowest.
At its lowest. Yeah. And then so the best way to do it then would be to get up in the morning and we exercise and deplete early in the day. Mainly because the moment we've finished the depletion, all of a sudden we're sensitive to things like insulin and leptin again, you know. So we deplete early, so that way you've got all day while you're burning and doing stuff to be insulin sensitive when you're eating, to be insulin sensitive. So as long as you don't reload all those carbs and fully reload a heap of sugar back into your cells or something, you kind of stay craving sugar, and that keeps you insulin sensitive.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, if I was to reload those, but we don't want to be reloading sugars at night, do we? We want to be using the protein snacks.
Right. Protein or fats, you know, whatever.
So nuts and seeds and like cheeses and things like that. Avocado. Yeah, right. That's
good.
Canned tuna.
So that sort of snacks at night, and then that'll keep you. Your body will still utilise those sort of things to replenish your glycogens and that sort of stuff, so you can get up and train in the morning.
Yep.
So you're not feeling too crappy. Have you noticed if you have a big carb meal at night, you wake up starving?
Yeah.
And if I don't have carbs, I have a high protein meal, I'm fine. I don't get hungry until lunchtime, sort of thing.
It's good. Perfect. That's exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Now, do you want to know some bad news about these hormones?
You were.
I'm sorry to be the one here, but they both alter they're both immune hormones as well. They both change your immune system. His leptin drives up T helper 1. Ghrelin drives up T helper 2.
So T helper 1 is your cellular immunity that kills off viruses, bacteria, microbes, and that sort of stuff. By engulfing and removing it. And anything that's too big to engulf and remove, we use T helper 2 to flush it away.
Correct.
That's a good summary.
And I'll put this in a practical term. Have you ever known athletes that get sick and they get really, really sick? You know, and they
but I forgot what you said at the start. So The what happens to TLP1?
Leptin drives up TLP1.
Okay.
And ghrelin drives up TLP2.
Oh, wow.
So if you've got fat on you, you should be able to fight an infection better than a very lean
But
athlete.
you're more predisposed to autoimmune,
Yes.
like thyroid disorders and psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis.
Because in the old days...
Endometriosis,
yeah.
I reckon it's kind of a bit autoimmune.
There's an interesting thing also between leptin and estrogen, but I'll
we'll
to
get
that
on-
in a
we'll get on to the
second.
And
Yeah.
ghrelin increases TLP2. So
Yes.
if there's someone that's hungry, they're more likely to be snotty.
Yeah, allergies, that sort of
So
thing.
so TLP2 is like snotty, hay fever, loose stools, that
I'll
sort of
put
thing.
this in a practical term with arthritis. People that are overweight get more arthritis. Now, in my day of training, a million years ago, we thought, oh, well, they're overweight, they're putting more stress on their joints, that gives them arthritis. Not the case. That's leptin that's causing that, because we who are runners put a lot of stress on our knees, bang, 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 bang for an hour or more. And if you're Dale, one of the other staff members here, about 4 hours on the weekend, she did the marathon. So
the Gold Coast.
yeah, so but I can't say that because I've done the marathon too, but I'm a bit too. So
Dale just left a car at the pub. She had to get back and get a car the next morning.
exactly. So this leptin thing causes arthritis, and this is why people who are overweight get arthritis in their hands. They don't walk on their hands, do they?
So leptin drives TLP1.
Yeah.
Does TLP1 drive leptin?
Inflammation does,
through leptin
Yeah.
resistance.
So it's what they call a positive feedback cycle, which is a dangerous one.
And firmicutes increase, an overgrowth of firmicutes and specific microbiome that will drive TLP1 will also increase leptin resistance.
Yeah, and that's
Imagine
why,
if it's a bacteria. Imagine if there was just like, say, Klebsiella or like a
As the reason for leptin resistance. Yeah.
Imagine if there was just a bug that infected us that caused leptin resistance, and on the other side, imagine if there was a parasite that stimulated a TLP2 response and ghrelin disorders, because if you imagine a parasite telling TLP2 to make you hungry would be handy. Imagine
Yes,
that. Imagine a parasite.
absolutely,
Imagine getting
yeah.
infected by a parasite that goes through and says, drive up ghrelin because I want more food delivered to me, please. I would not be surprised because bugs are like freaky.
Yeah.
they've done studies on calorie restriction diets and in humans, and they're supposed to improve longevity. But one of the most important aspects of them is that they seem to clear up people's arthritis.
Yeah, wow. Get rid of that leptin driving up the TLP1s.
It's probably that.
Isn't that interesting?
Because if you're hungry all the time, ghrelin comes out all the time, suppresses TLP1, and there goes your arthritis.
Oh, and it's the craziest thing too to explain to people that it's not the bugs that make you feel like shit. It's actually your immune system's response
Yes.
to it.
Yeah.
So someone that gets an overreactive TLP1 response are the sort of people that go, I'm always got a cold or a flu. I'm constantly getting sick. And you go, well, tell me about that. And you go, yeah, well, I get a bug. I kill it. Then I get another one. Yeah. But then the people that used to worry me in the clinic are the ones that used to say, I never get sick.
Yes,
I never get a
exactly.
cold or flu because they come back with cancers. You know, you're
Yeah.
like, oh man, your immune system's not doing anything.
That's
Yeah.
an absolute master segue. You talked about cancer then.
Master segue.
Well done.
Thank you.
Because guess what ghrelin does?
Cancer.
Yes.
Fuck, I knew it.
It can increase proliferation, all that stuff.
No, it's a builder. I mean, it grows things, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
ghrelin is Latin for growing, so it comes from it stimulates growth hormones. It's other side effect. Because if you're, let's say, starving in the bush, you want to preserve muscle mass, so it secretes
Starving
growth
in the
hormone.
book?
In the bush, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
In the bush. So, like, if you're starving in the bush, you secrete growth hormone to keep your muscle mass on. That's what ghrelin does. So, being hungry drives up growth hormone.
Yeah, right.
And that's just a stopgap to stop yourself from undergoing cachexia.
And that's why that ghrelin, it just comes and goes.
Yeah.
Because you can't constantly be hungry.
No.
And would stress, and people, like when you're anxious and what does stress do to ghrelin?
Stress changes it too. Stress increases ghrelin. That was one of the things in the chart here where it increases ghrelin. I've got a big, nice chart here from a paper showing.
So when you,
stress.
right.
Yeah. So it's very good. The other thing it suppresses ghrelin, you're going to love this.
What did you say stress did to ghrelin? Does it up it or down it?
It ups it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it ups it. Stress increases it. That's why it's so bad.
Wow.
That's what it says. But it's ghrelin.
I reckon it'd be different in acute and chronic. I reckon acute stress would probably shut it down.
Have you ever known people to stress eat?
What? Just do what?
To stress eat, where they get stressed.
Oh,
and
yeah,
they eat.
yeah. I'll eat for all
Yeah,
sorts
that's
of reasons.
regulated by ghrelin. Yeah,
that's because
that's right. The stress eating is a ghrelin.
And is that for the
response.
dopamine, maybe?
It could be to do with the dopamine. But there's also the hormones themselves can actually create stress as well. So leptin, for instance, like in the presence of leptin resistance, where you're now producing a lot more leptin because you're trying to get a response. It's like the body's trying to get a response. That leptin can stimulate corticotropin releasing hormone in the brain.
Yeah.
And that stimulates the release of your catecholamines, your stress hormones,
Yeah,
adrenaline,
yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
At the same time, this is quite interesting, is you also get the inflammation produced by leptin actually inhibits the COMT enzyme.
Yeah, right.
Catecholomethyltransferase.
There you go.
Just for those who...
And now by inhibiting that enzyme, you're not going to be breaking down those stress hormones as well. So that's exacerbating that whole stress thing. Plus the estrogen. So now you're also not metabolizing estrogen.
Tell me about... No, wait. What do you mean I'm not metabolizing estrogen?
Well, the estrogen...
So the leptin or the...
The leptin. So remember, leptin inhibits COMT.
Yep.
COMT has
There's
to
a
metabolize...
methylation gene for neurotransmitters
That's
like our
right.
adrenaline, norepinephrines, as well as estrogen.
As well as estrogen.
Yeah.
But now the interesting thing is that apart from the COMT, it also stimulates or upregulates a phase 1 liver enzyme CYP1B1, which breaks down estradiols. That's your healthy estrogen.
Yeah.
In other words, it makes this enzyme, it breaks down your healthy estrogen work faster. So now you're breaking down the estrogen into these toxic intermediate metabolites, which is what COMT has to clear out.
away,
methylate. But now
methylate.
COMT is not working because of all the leptins. So now you have all of these excessive amounts of harmful estrogen metabolites.
Right.
That in itself, in females, is going to contribute to things like endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, estrogen dominance, same as in men. It brings us back to when you said right in the beginning, Matt, like why, if I'm producing a lot of leptin, why am I overweight? Because I'm supposed to have a lot of this hormone that makes me lose weight. But that's another aspect. It creates an estrogen dominance in males as well as females, and that is another possible reason.
It's interesting too. So I might, because I do a lot of reading, and I might think that Google's telling me I've got a problem with my MTHFR gene, so I might go do a heap of gene testing because I'm sitting there, I've got estrogen dominance, I'm stressed, I've got endometriosis, I don't, but I could, and then gallbladder issues and all these different things. I got all these different problems, homocysteine build-up, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go check my MTHFR gene for testing and that sort of stuff, and it comes back fine. But I'm manifesting all of the symptoms of a methylation defect. I might have leptin problems.
Right.
So the leptin and the inflammation might be inhibiting COMT activity. So this is where we talk about genetic polymorphisms and genetic expression. So we might be actually damaging or inhibiting a gene from functioning because of a leptin issue or inflammation or obesity. It doesn't mean that... So I could be manifesting the issues of a MTHFR gene polymorphism without actually having that gene polymorphism.
Absolutely.
So for anyone out there that's gone and had suspected this clinical picture and tested it and found that, the doctors have said, no, we don't worry about that anymore, or, that I've got no evidence of this, or you've got one of them's affected, the other one's not, so it's not really... None of that really matters that much, huh?
No, it doesn't.
And okay, let me challenge you with this then. If this was all happening to me, and then I did do a test, and I got tested, showed that I had defective MTHFR. It's hard not to say motherfucker. So if I did find I had a defective gene there, taking a methylated folate would fix all this.
No.
Yeah, see?
If it does, it will be a fluke.
Oh, man,
it'll just be a fluke. Yeah.
Oh, that would be so nice and easy just to find a gene. So basically, you can't just go through and go, I'm manifesting all these gene defects. I'm just going to take the vitamin that bypasses that gene and I'm fine.
Yeah.
No, you've got to go back and find out what the hell's going on.
That's right.
The big picture. And it gets a little bit worse for men. Sorry to be a bearer of bad news. Fat cells also aromatise testosterone into estradiol.
Oh, well, there you go.
Of course,
It's
you've got the
worse.
problem with the detoxification. So that's why the number one risk factor for prostatic cancer in men, which is a huge cancer, is, age. But also the second one is being obese. And that's because you get loads of estradiol, and that's what stuffs your prostate up, not testosterone. Otherwise,
teenagers will get it.
The teenagers who have a prostate the size of a football. I mean, God, as we age, as men age, after 18, our testosterone plummets.
Yeah.
And yet a prostate levels go up.
Prostate problem.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not testosterone, just to bust that myth. So if you said, don't take testosterone because it's your prostate, it's not testosterone. It's the metabolite of testosterone, estradiol.
Yeah. Through aromatization, and the more fat cells you got, the more aromatization you got.
And cytochrome P450, 1B1 inhibition, and all those things that Elizma perfectly articulated.
That's wicked, man.
It is wicked. But you want to know some interesting, we were mentioning ghrelin. I've got an absolutely great diagram here of showing what ghrelin does. Now, this won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but it down-regulates pretty much every inflammatory marker there is. TNF, interferon, gamma, interleukin-1.
So ghrelin's anti-inflammatory?
Yeah, for T-helper 1. Yeah. And then it drives up interleukin 10, interleukin 4, and transforming growth factor beta. So
the T-helper 2s.
Yeah, the T-helper 2s. And the reduction in inflammation. That's why diet, just changing your diet to, make yourself eating better, not feeling stuffed and those sort of things can absolutely have an amazing effect on your immune system.
And just eating clean.
Clean.
And so when we're talking about just avoiding the crappy inflammatory things that might be in the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And overeating. Yeah. Don't overeat so your stomach's distended so much that it pretty much shuts off.
But how do you know you're full? That's the problem. Until my eyes go blurry and my tummy's bloated, I don't. Man, seriously, what is that, Elizma? You're this weird person that knows this shit. When I eat too much, the first thing I'd feel, my eyes go blurry. My vision goes blurry if I eat too much.
Yeah, I'm not sure. What does that. I mean, what does your
pressure? I wonder.
Probably pressure.
That's going to bug me, eh?
I have no idea.
No, it's true. I'll sit there and eat, and then all of a sudden my eyes go blurry and go, wow, man, I've eaten too much. I better stop.
Okay, so I wonder if that could be to do with the vasoconstriction or anything like that. Whether there's a blood, because we know that the eyes are very sensitive in terms of blood supply.
Oh yeah.
Whether there could be maybe a vasoconstrictive effect.
Yeah, or glycation effect with the sugars damaging the blood vessels. Because we know this.
But I'll be talking in a meal. I'll be talking like meat and veg. I'm not talking junk food. I'll be talking like in a dinner. Right. In the middle of a dinner, and I'll be eating too much. Eyes go blurry.
I'm going to try and find why.
That's why I'm planting.
What about? Okay, so this is probably not correct, but this is a far shot. But when you're eating, then you're secreting more leptin because the leptin is now telling you that you're getting full.
Yeah.
Leptin stimulates adrenaline release.
Yep.
Adrenaline release causes vasoconstriction.
Yep.
Far shot, probably not true, but I thought.
What about the vagus nerve stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system to bring the blood into the stomach, causing the vasoconstriction in the periphery, and also reducing the sympathetic nerve activation to the pupils, the eyes, so I can't focus for the distance. I can only see up close and focus on finishing my meal. I missed a bit. Well, that sort of thing.
Maybe you're overeating and too much blood's going to your digestive system, and therefore it's like when you get orthostatic hypotension, your vision goes. So lower blood supply to the eyes. Do you want to know another story about leptin?
Yeah, but why not?
It actually is supposed to, when it's working, suppress this other chemical called neuropeptide Y.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Now, do you want
nippy?
Yeah, nippy. We'll call it. We'll call it nippy. It's a 36 chain protein.
Don't call it nippy.
Don't call
someone
it nippy.
Will be offended.
Someone will be offended by that. Yeah.
Just neuropeptide Y is fine.
Yeah. Okay. So this is your big enemy when you're trying to diet, because it increases hunger dramatically. It suppresses brown fat metabolism, so your metabolism. It's a starvation hormone, so it helps you live. It suppresses testosterone, so you don't reproduce. It increases cortisol to give you that stress response to get more food.
Yeah.
And you don't want any of that when you're trying to lose weight.
Can you get it in injection so I can give it to people? Like little
people
don't like?
They do it in rats, and they basically can't control their eating. If you inject some...
Oh, that's that one too where they electrocuted their food.
They're still
they kept going back.
Really?
And, even with electrocuted food, they were so damn hungry. Oh, give me more. I'm hungry.
Yeah, we call it the Homer Simpson hormone. That's how I used to, because he can't stop eating. And
so they would be very much into binge eating and things like that,
And uncontrollably, like they're the patients that you guys probably used to get, and I did too, where you would say, okay, you can't eat cake after dinner, that's crazy stuff. Oh, okay, yeah, it's bad for you, and they still do.
Yeah,
and you kind of go, what is wrong with you? And it could be too much neuropeptide Y via leptin resistance.
Yeah, wow. So leptin resistance and insulin resistance, therefore, too, would drive up neuropeptide Y.
Yeah.
And neuropeptide Y is going to say, you eat that shit even through an electric fence.
Yes.
Like, you just get that stuff in.
If you're a rat, absolutely. They ate it despite getting an electric shock from eating food. Yep. I mean, humans, you remember Homer with the cupcake. You ever see the episode where that's what the rats were doing, and they were physically eating the food because they couldn't control themselves.
Wow. Is that linked in with addictions and that sort of stuff as well?
Well, I don't know about addictions, but...
food, maybe carb addiction.
Carb addiction.
Definitely. There's neuropeptide Y receptors, or there's a system where that also feeds into the VTA or the dopamine system as well.
Yeah.
Which is, again, that reward. It's very interesting because if you look at it, they all pretty much flow in with one another. You know, dopamine, neuropeptide 1, ghrelin, leptin, they all have this role to play. So,
but there's things we can do.
Yeah.
Because this is the whole thing that bugs me, because it annoys the shit out of me, because I'm always trying to find things that we can do. And when I read all of this sort of stuff, it's like, oh yeah, so when we're obese, we got a heap of these chemicals. When we're not obese, we don't. Just don't be obese. You know? And like, but the problem is when you're in obese state and you've got all those chemicals, man, if we could just access the power of those chemicals, because they're there for, nothing is there for no reason.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they are there for a reason. It's just like a perfect storm that creates these chemicals to be released, but then our body can't hear them.
Yeah.
It's not allowing them to work. And that's why I'm always looking for the thing that can work with what we got. Like there's got to be something that we can tap into that leptin. There's got to be a way, like, of making those leptin receptors work. I know there's lots of ways. We listed 6, straight away, but they're all things associated. Like, if you don't fix the obesity, that's kind of still there. Like, absolutely. I can fix my gut, I can take anti-inflammatories, I can do these things. But if I have a heap of fat cells, I'm going to have the estrogen dominance, I'm going to have the inflammation, and it's going to keep driving it. So if we do those things, though, knowing that I've got leptin floating around, you're definitely going to improve your results to any diet and exercise campaign.
Absolutely. And if you want a place to start, because look, it is easy to say do fasted high interval training and eat more vegetables, but that's often still very hard for people to, even though it's actionable, it can still be a very hard thing for people to start off with. So if you really, really struggle, I mean, I think a very easy place to start would be just minerals. Get a multi-mineral, or get some kind of mineral supplement, because that's already, we talked about the minerals in the beginning, that will start to sensitize the receptors again. So that would be a very easy place to start.
One of the most potent minerals is vanadium, but it's banned in Australia.
So, is it?
Yeah.
It's still used in some...
It's probably some old ones. But
colloidal mineral formulas.
It could be allowed on that level, but vanadium is a potent one. The interesting thing about this whole thing, this leptin, ghrelin, all those other great hormones, is up until about 50 years ago, this worked beautifully to keep us all fairly lean. Yeah. Because obesity was a fairly newish sort of thing. I mean, maybe the odd one, in the olden days, but certainly it's just failed recently. So the design to, like, let's say I was designing a human being and I said, all right, give them all these bunch of hormones that counteract each other. So as when they're hungry, this one goes up and this one goes, and this is the theory of the human body's eating. And it worked great up until 50 years ago, until everything went kaput.
Yeah, right.
And it's,
so is that around the time of the sugar lobby and the food pyramids and all that sort of shit,
Because Industrial Revolution would have been one, the motor car become more popular and cheaper and everyone had it, even to this very day where kids are not doing as much exercise as they used to, and all these factors.
Circadian rhythm disruption, because now we get the shift workers. So
it's been great. So it does work if you follow the laws of nature. It's just the trans fats
back
things
to the basics,
that's when things become screwed. So the great design of the human body, if I can call it that, was terrific up until a few years ago, really. Very, very recently.
And see, this is probably why even some people that make a significant change to their lifestyle and do like a juice fasting scenario or something like that, they can correct their obesity in that individual to a certain degree, and once they do that. So sometimes it's a matter of making a clean change. Like, even if you can't do all of these things at once, if you start going clean, you make sure you're getting the adequate proteins, we're getting away from the fast sugars and that sort of stuff. That's pretty important. Exercise, whatever. Exercise. You just have to move. And don't think about exercise as, I've got to hurt myself and build these muscles. Just think about burning the shit that's in your cells. Because in regards to this instance, that's all we're talking about. Just deplete some stuff that's there. You don't have to really stress yourself out with obesity in regards to heart rates and blood pressures and blood sugar. Just the basic concept of inside every cell of your body, you've got an energy warehouse that's got fuel built up into it. If you've got obesity, you've got an abundance of fuel there. We just need to burn that so we can let more in. It's just to clear the path. I mean, you don't have to get too complicated. So the things that we can do straight away is reduce our stress, try to reduce our inflammation, get our gut right, get exercise in of some sort, just start going really clean.
Yeah.
And that's probably the first place for anyone to start. Then we can and then we're looking at the minerals, the chromium, the magnesium, the zincs, the seleniums, all that sort of stuff we mentioned. That's probably the most of it, hey?
Yeah.
Also, too, keep in mind that we mentioned the immune system. If your immune system's right out of whack, if your guts are out of whack, or if you've got intolerances, if you're not eating a varied enough diet and you've acquired immune reactions against the same food you eat every day, a lot of these things can be individualised for the person. When you go through a naturopath consult, you go through and go, oh, for this person, you got a lot of inflammation come from your immune system. We can clean that up.
Yeah.
Another person might go, you got candida overgrowth. Another person might be swimming in estrogen chemicals every day.
Yeah.
So you got to look at those individual things. But as a general rule across the board, the common sense stuff, you clean the pathways. Yeah, I want to say things like maintain a calorie deficit, but I know it's harder than that. You can't just say maintain a calorie deficit, because we're talking about leptin and ghrelin that regulate your metabolism.
Yeah.
So we're talking about not just trying to calculate where you're at, but actually manipulating your metabolism by manipulating these hormones by changing the way you eat.
Absolutely, because the exercise, by improving the leptin resistance, will get all of that started. And that in itself, it's interesting because a lot of people, when they start losing weight, a lot of their immune problems resolve as well.
Yeah.
And that's because, hormones like leptin is needed to activate the mitochondria. And remember that the white blood cells, it uses the most ATP in the body.
Yeah, it's quite high.
So your immune system needs a ton of energy.
Yeah.
Mitochondria is not working because of leptin resistance. You are going to have all kinds of immune irregularity.
And of course you're going to have a lot of more fatigue issues. You're going to have a lot more metabolic waste when you start training.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to ease into it, man. Don't go in and don't think you can go in and push yourself as hard as your coach does, because he's been doing it all day, every day for a period of time.
Yeah.
You need to go in and work within your range, So
and you got to remember, leptin has other negative effects that we need to think about too. With your heart, for example, it causes atherosclerosis.
But that's not good.
That's not
hardening
good.
in the arteries.
That's the biggest killer in Australia.
So leptin causes heart disease.
Yep.
It does probably bone crap.
Yeah,
it is involved in bone metabolism.
Yep.
So probably a lot of osteoporosis and things like that.
Yep.
It
And all those
reduces
osteoarthritic,
chondrocytes and bone mass as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so
pretty
chondrocytes, and that's the end of the bones that makes your cartilage. So that's why that more osteoarthritis with the obesities.
And rheumatoid for the inflammation. Or just aches and pains.
Yeah.
It's like those people who you see that they're overweight, and you used to see them in the clinic. Oh, why don't you go for a walk? Oh, I can't, because when I was 14, I twisted my knee playing netball, and now it's sore.
Yeah.
But now I'm 50 and overweight.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, hang on, is it the twisted knee at 14, or is it the fact you've got too much leptin causing inflammation in your knee?
The same too. But if you get those mitochondrial disorders or dysfunction and that sort of stuff, lying still for 8 hours at night to sleep might build up the same amount of metabolic waste as you guys build up doing your morning run.
Yeah.
So these boys are waking up feeling like you would if you weren't running, a couple of days after doing a bloody marathon. They're waking up that way every day from lying still.
Yeah.
So then you try to explain to them that, no, trust me, you go exercise, you'll feel better because we can clear out that waste. Yeah. They're like, oh, no, man, like seriously, I crumble when I exercise, So you got to understand that.
So this is where the art of a naturopath comes in. Those people could say, go to the heated pool for a swim.
Yeah.
Because don't worry about building muscle, or just swim.
Yeah.
In the heated pool.
And that's your individualised prescriptions.
Correct.
That's the challenge. Yeah.
It's something that they can do that's not going to bust their knees or cause them pain. In fact, you feel better after a swim. I don't know people who don't. I don't know people who get out of the pool and go, oh, that really killed my knee. It doesn't work like that. It's a very good exercise, good passive movement, because there's no weight on your knee. It's what they call torquing your knee, which is putting a stress on it sideways, which is good for in the water. Yeah. So there's that. Also with leptin, it does target our reproduction as well.
What does it do?
It causes placental dysfunction and trophoblast invasion. Yeah, fetal production's affected, and the gonadotropins are also affected. And this is why a lot of people who are overweight, particularly women, struggle with their fertility. And if they do fall pregnant, they have major health problems.
Yeah.
And leptin's the one that drives up TOPA1?
Yep. Which is bad for pregnancy.
And TOPA1 is, in my opinion, is the main reason for infertility in many, many people, where the immune system rejects the sperm and the
there's another role in terms of pregnancy and all of that as well. Like, leptin inhibits Treg cell
Yep.
production.
Yeah.
Whereas HCG, or human chorionic gonadotrophic hormone, did I say that right?
Sounds good.
Human
Alright,
gonadotrophic
so-
Sound like I know. I heard a H and a C and a G in there, so I'll go over that.
there, which is the hormone that is secreted in large amounts during pregnancy, as that specific hormone upregulates Treg activity, and that's designed so that the woman's body doesn't reject the fetus.
Yeah.
So now you can see how leptin and HCG are antagonistic to each other,
Yeah.
and then that brings us to the question: well, increased rates of miscarriage and all of that, is that also associated with the leptin resistance?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Would it be a link with obesity, or doesn't have to be?
No,
It'd
well,
have
it
to be.
usually
It'd have
is.
to
I
be.
mean, a lot of...
You'd never see leptin resistance in a lean person, would you?
No, but I'm going to be careful in saying that because you can get skinny fat. I call them skinny fat people, right?
Yeah.
So it needs to.
Sarcopenic
It needs to be. It's not about the size of the person; it's the body fat percentage.
Yeah. So if they got really no muscle mass.
If there's no muscle mass, they
Yeah.
can still have a relatively high body fat percentage. But that generally has to be, I think, over 20 for males and over 25 for females in terms of a BMI.
Which is
Yeah.
Still pretty
short.
It's
Too
pretty
short.
It's pretty interesting.
That's my problem with the BMI.
Too short.
Too short. I'm not tall enough.
Because BMI is body mass index, and it's a ratio
It's
of weight
height
to
divided
height.
by weight squared or something stupid, isn't it?
Weight
So-
divided by height squared.
Something stupid.
Yeah,
I know if I
something
was
stupid.
taller, I would be better off.
Yes.
I'd fit into the category
If you
nicely.
were 2.5 meters, you square that, it's like 4.5.
Oh, gee, Steve. You double my height, basically. He's like, Matt, you're like way too short. You need to be like 2.5 meters to fit into the scale, you fat
just made
bastard.
it up
Well,
from that.
thanks, Steve.
I just made that up for mathematical convenience. I could have said 2 meters because 2 squared's 4.
No, look. You've done your damage now. I'm going to cry on my cornflakes. Because I eat cornflakes.
Don't eat cornflakes. You know what happens then? Oh, geez.
Anyway, I'm sure I was going to say something genius. Now I'm just going to cry.
You want some more bad news about leptin?
Oh, why not?
It causes insulin resistance at the muscle level.
Oh, suck.
Yeah,
that sucks
that's
because you can't
sucky.
build muscle.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Sorry
really
about that.
sucks because then you're resistant to insulin-like growth
Yeah.
factor for your muscle growth, which
It
kind of...
also adversely affects your kidneys.
Kidneys. We have 2 of them. That's why we have 2 of them and 1 liver. They
And
can never keep
adversely
up
affects
anyway.
pancreas, particularly the beta cells,
Oh, yeah?
which means you can develop type 2 diabetes. That's why obesity is heavily associated with type 2 diabetes.
And here I was thinking I wanted more and more of this stuff because I
Nah.
wanted to strip off my fat.
I know.
So now, does all that happen if I'm leptin resistant?
yes.
Oh, shit.
Because
Here I was thinking, I'm golden,
Because
I'm leptin
it's
resistant. I got
only-
to that level of fat.
it's only at the receptors that you're resistant. It's still high everywhere else in the body. It still
Yeah.
affects the pancreas. Because you've got no leptin receptors.
So that's
in
why
the
with people
pancreas.
that insulin resistance, the insulin still causes a polycystic ovarian syndrome.
right.
Cortisol resistance still causes a blood pressure problem, but it
Yeah.
won't switch off your stress. I get it. Yeah, right.
It's a good theory, though. It's good. But it was used. It was going to be trialed
All
as
right.
a drug.
Okay, one more theory.
Yes.
Could I fix could I speak? No. Could I fix leptin resistance through liposuction?
I reckon
Removing my triglycerides.
Theoretically, yeah.
if you suck out all your white
Because that's your
fat
endocrine
cells,
organ. So
Yeah.
if you less fat cells, less leptin production.
Yeah. Can I give you some?
It's got to be easier than all that other stuff you're talking about.
Well, it's
How much inflammation do you reckon comes from liposuction? There's a lot of trauma.
it's incredible because the other option for the liposuction is the gastric banding thing, and
Yeah.
what we know that actually screws greptin levels below.
Greptin.
What did I say?
I love the greptin. That's what my business is called. Greptin.
I just want to confuse everybody out there.
With a bit of greptin. Let's just sign off by saying
Greptin.
greptin is amazing.
Greptin is amazing.
You should get that.
So I reckon your business plan's great because otherwise your ghrelin levels will be suppressed too low if you have the lap band surgery. I think it's a train wreck of an idea, frankly.
So basically, lap band, they make your tummy smaller.
Yeah.
And so you don't get ghrelin released because
Don't get
ghrelin's
ghrelin.
released.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful graph I've printed out which shows you how much is released compared to the fat and skinny people.
Bugger all.
And we'll use the magic of television. It's basically this big long flat line at the bottom there. As you can see there, that's the gastric bypass group. Look at the ghrelin levels there.
Oh my gosh, Steve, look at that.
It's just zero.
It's just trickling
It doesn't go up
along.
and down, so they don't want to eat. They don't want to.
That's right.
It's horrendous.
And I reckon that's the reason for the weight loss with
they're
gastric
not hungry.
bypass. It's
They
not
don't feel
because
pain.
the stomach is smaller. It's just because they just don't get hungry.
It's just
Weird,
terrible.
eh?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm hungry now. Anyway,
Well, that's all we've got time for. We've completely run out of time. Look at that. So I can't think of anything intelligent to end this with. But
Only the mighty deep sea lobster knows the power of his own claw. And let that be a lesson to you. Okay, bye.
all right, thank
everyone.
you guys. Have a great day.
Last word, Elizma?
I don't know.
So I started. No, edit that out. So, but yeah, edit that shit out.
Yeah. I want to tell.
But yeah, so. No, that was a terrible finish.
That's got to be one of my worst, isn't it?
I'd say so.
Yeah, that's good.
Keep that snippet for Steve's bio.
Yeah, that'd be terrific.
I know. Well, that was that, and now next week will be something else.